Hey, welcome to another edition of Know the Bible Plain and Simple. We're looking at the stories of Scripture. Story number 25 today. We're in the New Testament, stories of Jesus. Today, Jesus heals. So much of his ministry was in healing. We're just going to look at 5 of those healings today. To read, I would recommend John chapter 9. It's just the account of one healing, but it takes up a whole chapter. A great story to know, and the one that we'll start with today as well. A lot of fun. You got some mud and saliva going together to make the healing happen. What happens with the healings of Jesus is what we notice is that there's no set way that he does it. Each one is a little bit different from the other. They're really related to the situation, to the person that he is relating to. It's not just a matter of some snapping a finger and healing the world, but dealing with people in personal ways. And this first one that we look at is no exception. So we've got a man who is born blind. The disciples wonder, why was he born blind? Is it something that his parents did? Is it something he did? Now, what's the reason for it? They always like to connect sin with disease or ailments or such like that. Jesus says, no, it has nothing to do with sin. It has to do with God's going to work some glory in this man's life. And so Jesus spits on some dirt, makes some mud, puts it on the man's eyes, and tells him to go wash it off in the pool of Siloam. And the man does, and all of a sudden he can see as his eyes are open. And then the next huge part of the chapter is this man and especially the religious authorities of the synagogue debating on how Jesus could have done it. How could this man, who everyone knew had been blind all of his life, how could he now see? And the man first says, I don't know how the guy did it. He just did it. Eventually, the Pharisees, with all their questioning, force man eventually confesses, listen, this man has to be from God because who else but God himself could make someone who's born blind all of a sudden see again. At the end of the chapter, Jesus catches up with the man again, reveals to the man who he is, and the man professes his belief, his faith, his trust in Jesus. Really, really a neat chapter, worth reading. I'm going to look at 5 healings today. The other ones are from Luke. Luke has some really detailed accounts of healings. Luke was a physician himself, so the physical ailments, all that kind of stuff, meant a lot to him. And so if you want to read more healings, go and just skim through the Gospel of Luke, though all the Gospel writers have it, because Jesus was involved in healing everywhere he went. Every town he went to, he would heal people who were sick. And one of the first healings that is recorded in the Gospels is the healing of the paralytic. Jesus was at a house, as he often was, and people were bringing the sick to Jesus in that house, as they often did. But it was crowded, it was packed, and there was a paralyzed man who we don't even know if the paralyzed man wanted to go, but the 4 friends of the paralyzed man brought him on his mattress. Couldn't get him into the house, so they went up on the roof and they dug a hole. They dug through the roof and lowered him down. You could just imagine the mess that made, and the excitement, and oh my goodness, what's going on? And once they lower him down, what's interesting about this miracle is that this healing is that Jesus begins by simply forgiving the man. Your sins are forgiven. This causes an uproar among the religious leaders. How does he have the right to forgive sins? And Jesus, like, what's harder, forgiving sins or telling this man to get up and walk? But just so that you know, the Son of Man has the authority to forgive sins, get up and walk. And sure enough, now the man gets up and walks. So it's really beautiful how, again, like the man born blind, there's both the physical healing and the spiritual healing that is going on as well. Another interesting healing is the healing of the centurion's servant. Here, Jesus doesn't even go to the servant, doesn't talk to the servant at all. The centurion says, you don't need to come. He doesn't go. He just say the word. As I tell others what to do, you can tell the sickness to be gone, and it will listen to you. I've got faith in that. And sure enough, that's what happens. Jesus just says the word. So the servant is is healed without Jesus coming. And Jesus notes that this faith in the centurion, remember, the centurion isn't even a Jewish person. He isn't a follower of God like the other Jewish people are, and yet he still has this faith. Another account, great healing, which is really a double healing, is the healing of Jairus' daughter. And Jairus was a religious leader, and his daughter was near death. And so he goes and he cries out to Jesus to have mercy and to come. He wants Jesus to come and heal his daughter. And so Jesus, okay, every person's different. Relate to them on a personal level. This man needs me to come. I'm coming with him. And on their way to the house, there's such crowd all around. A woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years decides, you know what, the physicians have made things worse rather than better. She's just going to touch the edge of his garment. And if she does that, then she feels like she'll be healed. And sure enough, she does. She just barely touches the edge of his garment, and she is healed. And she knows it right away. Jesus, though, knows it too. He knows the power has gone out from him. He says, who is it that touched me? The disciples, like, everyone's been touching you. There's a huge crowd going. He said, no, someone did something. And then the woman finally stands up and confesses, I'm the one who did it. And he's like, almost don't worry about it. This is great. Your faith, your trust in me has made you well. Not everyone has trust in him, but are still made well. But for her trust made her well. Okay, her faith made her well. Don't know if the paralytic had any trust in Jesus to start with. Again, that's not always the common factor. But then they keep going to Jairus' daughter's house, and by then the daughter's already dead. The people are mourning, and Jesus says, "Don't worry, she's not dead. She's just sleeping." And they laugh at her because they know she's dead. And Jesus goes and he calls her to get up. And sure enough, breath of life comes back into her, and she rises, and he gives her back to his parents. Though he tells the parents that don't tell anyone about this, kind of like, don't tell her that I raised her from the dead, because what's going to happen then. Though we will talk more about Jesus raising some people from the dead in one of our other sessions. And then the last one I want to share with you today is also in Luke chapter 17. The 10 lepers. Lepers were people with skin disease, and they had to be separated from everyone else, kind of like pandemic quarantine. And he comes across a group of them, because they're allowed to be with each other, but not with others, who shout out to him from a distance, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And Jesus does. And he sends them, he says, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And so they go. They're not healed right away. They go, and on their way, they become healed. Everyone's a little different. On their way, they're healed. And one of them decides not to go to the priest, but to come back to Jesus and to thank Jesus and to worship Jesus at his feet, clinging at his feet, being close to him, whom he couldn't come close to before. And Jesus notes it. He says, listen, weren't 10 of them healed and only one come back? And this one who came back was not a Jew. He was a Samaritan. And so again, the healing is given to everyone. Sometimes they have faith, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're God's people, sometimes they're not. He just freely gives, and people react to it in many and various ways. I think of all these things, what I love to go back to is to the paralytic and the connection with the forgiveness of sins and healing. Sometimes we forget that it's the stuff that's inside that is causing, that is adding to the harm that we have, the ailments that we have showing on the outside. And so with this man, Jesus went right to the heart of the issue. As I'm going to go inside, and we don't know exactly what sins were on the man's mind. Obviously, they were, though. This is Jesus in a personal way is dealing with this man with what he needs, and he knew that even more important than this man getting up and walk, for him, I need to go right into the heart and the forgiveness of sins. And sometimes that's what we need to hear too. And that's what he always gives. That's the blessed thing about Jesus. Which one of these healings stands out most to you as one of your favorites, or are there other ones that you know of? Or page through, skim through some of the Gospels, Gospel of Luke, and see some of the other healings and which one stands out to you. Share that with each other. If you will, what stands out to you, then certainly take some time to pray for and with each other. And of course, close with the Lord's Prayer. And next time we'll be back with Jesus Teaches. So we hear some of the teaching that he does. Thanks a lot. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.